it sounds a little bit like the argument that Donald Trump made was, listen, I know all about, the way that politicians steal because they used to steal from me.
Correct.
I know all about
This
corruption.
is so important.
They were corrupt with me.
Yes.
So I alone can fix it because I know for corruption.
We got to talk about this.
And he didn't rise from nothing. He rose from the nothing of a $14 million inheritance. But to a lot of his supporters, you even write here, and I'm going to read another little piece from your book. You say that people have an intuition that this cult of elite-backed social change is BS. And that Trump exploited that intuition, you write, by whipping it into frenzied anger and then directing most of that anger not at elites, but at the most marginalized and vulnerable Americans.
So there are two things there. First of all, I think what Trump did, the most positive thing I can say about him, is that he correctly understood a correct intuition that many Americans had that was underserved by other politicians, that the system was rigged and that elites in government and business were sort of in cahoots with each other and didn't care about, regular people as much as they proclaimed. He's not the first. I think Bernie Sanders also tapped into that feeling. I think Howard Dean Ross Perot tapped into that feeling. But he did a good job of reading the presence of that feeling and catering to it and making choices to serve it. The tragedy of Donald Trump is that he then deflected it, and instead of harnessing that anger and going after some of the people who have hurt the working and middle classes in America, he suddenly made it about blacks and Muslims and immigrants and women and things that just nothing to do with that cause. The second important thing that you raised is this point about language. I think this is so important and so painful for many of us. The reality is a lot of Trump's language, and I use this word in heavy quotations, but kind of intellectual moves.
He went to the best schools, Anna.
He did. A lot of his intellectual moves are actually the moves over the last 20, 30, 40 years of the philanthrocapitalists, most of whom, in my experience, vote for Democrats. So let's just talk about some of those moves. I made stuff in China and Mexico. Yeah, I totally made stuff in China and Mexico. That's why I uniquely can go to China and Mexico and get better deals. That's the arsonist rebranded as firefighter. That is the same as what every philanthrocapitalist tells us. Because I work in business, because I work in hedge funds, I can actually go fight for working people and figure out what they need better than others. I can figure out public education better than others. When Trump, secondly, says, or does, I can enrich myself while fighting for the meekest among us, right? The whole thing is premised on that. That is the win-win, which is at the heart of this book. That is the phoniness of the win-win. The idea that many wealthy people have spread in this country, that they can have their cake and eat it too, that doing what is right for others requires no sacrifice. Again, he didn't invent that idea. That track was laid for him by perfectly lovely things like Tom's Shoes and these others that just spread this idea, a tote bag that changes the world, or a bank that can just totally rape and pillage, but also have an impact fund on the side. A lot of us participated in giving this guy a set of templates. And I think you don't get Donald Trump without 18 parallel system failures that were uncorrelated from each other. A lot of machines have to break at the same time. And they can't all be the fault of the Republican Party and Paul Ryan and the Koch brothers. And I think that's where it starts to become an uncomfortable and painful conversation that I think a lot of us either bought into ideas or participated in a culture that allowed our biggest problems to be unsolved, that rich-splained to poor and middle class and working class people that things were great when they weren't, and that allowed this phenomenon to kind of wreck our civilization.
It's